Before NBA players were competing in front of thousands of fans that have their name on the back of a jersey, they were like anyone else. Going to the park and playing pickup with friends is where every basketball player finds their love for the game, and a bunch of players have brought this to the NBA. In this video, we're going to be looking at 8 of the best NBA players who literally play street ball in the NBA and get away with it. We're going to be looking throughout history for these picks, so make sure to watch the whole thing and let us know what you think in the comments below. Before we get into our top 8 list, I want to shout out 2 guys that barely missed the cut but still helped bring street ball to the league. The first one is Dr. J, because we all know how cold he was with the 76ers, and he was doing moves that no one ever even attempted before. From the cradle layup to crazy dunks, Dr. J had the medicine for everybody. And then the second shout out goes to James Harden, a guy who made iso ball the main focus of a team who nearly went to the finals. He could do everything on the court, and for that reason, he deserves a shout out for this video. But now let's get into the best street ball players ever. Coming in at number 8 on the best street ball players ever is a guy that everyone knows, and that's Vince Carter. This pick shouldn't be a surprise to anyone because Carter is literally a human highlight reel, and defending him was every defender's worst nightmare. He had handles that could help him get to the rim effectively, and throughout his career, he was always an underrated three-point shooter, which really means he could do it all. Now look, in the grand scheme of NBA play, some fans call Vince Carter one of the most overrated players ever, and honestly, I don't necessarily disagree. VC was always a great guy and someone you could root for, but for the last 12 years or so of his career, he was honestly pretty average. Even if that's true, he still had some of the best moves and moments in NBA history, and that proves that he's one of the better street ballers ever. In the Olympics, Carter had one of the best dunks ever over a 7'2" defender, and people like to call it the dunk of death. Pair that with the fact that Carter had one of the best dunk contest performances ever, and it's easy to see why he's on this list. In my opinion, he's the best dunker ever, and if that doesn't scream street ball, I don't know what does. If the NBA never worked out, VC would have been insane on a pro street ball team, or something like the Harlem Globetrotters, because no one could keep him from the basket. Coming up next on our list is a player whose height has been debated ever since he joined the league, and of course that's Kevin Durant. It must have been awful guarding KD growing up, because when we talk about players that could do everything, Durant is one of the names that people think of. Many people consider him to be the best offensive player ever, because at pretty much 7 foot, he could shoot the mid-range, drive for a dunk, hit the 3-ball, or dish out a nice pass. And then on defense, he's always been very quick and very tall, so getting blocks or reaching for steals has always made him an alright defender. I would say the biggest part of his game that reminds me of street ball is when he does a nice dribble move into a pull-up jumper, because it's butter every time, and it just looks like a move you'd see on the pavement at the basketball courts. For some of these guys on this list, there's no footage of them playing street ball, so I'm just picking them based off moves they actually pull off in-game. But Durant actually has insane footage playing street ball, and it came during the 2011 NBA lockout. When the NBA couldn't figure their stuff out, KD went to play at New York's infamous Rucker Park, which is one of the biggest street ball places in the world. He literally cooked everyone that day and left the entire audience in awe as he yammed the ball or made a 3 every possession. I know some people are still mad at him for his Golden State decision, but come on, even the haters can't deny that KD is good at basketball anywhere. The 6th best street ball player in NBA history is actually another active player, and he's only 23 years old. LaMelo Ball has been dominating the NBA this season, and his brand of basketball has always been street ball, even in regulated games with refs. LaMelo has been perfecting the game of street ball ever since he was young, and to really see how, you have to watch his Chino Hills highlights. As a freshman, he would literally just run around the much older seniors and either fade out for a 3-pointer or drive in for an easy lay, and honestly, it's really impressive what he did. And I know you've all seen the clip of him pointing at the half-court line and then draining the triple, and stuff like this is exactly why he's on the list. Now with the Charlotte Hornets, Ball has taken street ball in the NBA to a different level, constantly shooting one-legged threes and throwing crazy lobs with pinpoint accuracy. Keep in mind that he's playing the street ball style of basketball against NBA level defenders, and he's still averaging right around 30 points a night along with 7 assists and 5 rebounds. He's taking 13 3-pointers a night too and draining 36% of them, which is crazy to think about. I know having him on this list above guys like KD is crazy because of how young he is, but to me it doesn't matter, because he's doing things we haven't seen before, and he's been playing street ball for years, so he definitely deserves his spot. The next guy on our list was way before his time, but he was still doing wild moves that kept the defense guessing what would come next. Even though the 60s and 70s constantly get disrespected, Pistol Pete Maravich could have definitely played today and been one of the more exciting players in the league. He was only a 5-time All-Star, which is lower than I thought, but you have to remember, being one of the best street ball players doesn't mean you are automatically the best player in the league. But in 1976, Maravich did average 31 points a night, and he finished 3rd in MVP voting, so he definitely used his moves to get buckets. One of the more underrated aspects of Pistol Pete's career has to be his college days, because I don't think enough people talk about it. Before Caitlin Clark beat his record, he was the all-time leading scorer in college basketball history with 3,667 points scored, and he did that all during his time at LSU. Over his 3-year stint in college, Maravich averaged 44 points a night along with 6 rebounds and 5 assists, solidifying himself as one of the best college players ever. College is where he must have perfected adding street ball to his game, and once he got to the NBA, he was ready to dominate anyone in front of him. He's underappreciated in NBA history, but here's us giving him his flowers. If you have a couple minutes, go watch watch his highlight tape because it's worth it. A point guard who honestly played a lot like Pistol Pete also has a sick nickname, and that's Jason Williams, aka White Chocolate. Williams' career was the definition of a role-playing point guard, a guy who played for multiple teams and was in charge of passing the ball and occasionally scoring. If you just looked him up on Basketball Reference and took a look at his stats, you would think he was just a playmaking guard who carved out a nice role in the NBA. But then you end up turning on his highlights, and what you see is a 6'1" demon who did everything in an unorthodox way. From passing the ball using his elbow to crossing up some of the best defenders in the league for a nice finish at the rim, White Chocolate was an absolute dog who played strictly street ball. He had a famous no-look pass that everyone fell for, and NBA players at the time would tell you he was one of the hardest players to guard. And keep in mind, this is the same time as Kobe and LeBron James. Honestly, Williams is surprisingly not underrated because I think everyone knows how cold he was. He's always getting brought up when talking about flashy NBA players, and if you watch any NBA compilation, he's most likely gonna be in there. If he was slightly better at scoring the ball, he would probably be the top 3 instead of sitting at 4, but still, I think this is a respectable spot for sure. The player who comes in at number 3 in this video had legitimately the nastiest crossover in the league, and I want you guys to comment before I reveal it to you. If you commented Jamal Crawford, you'd be 100% correct, because when street ball gets brought up, you have to mention Mr. Sixth Man of the Year himself. His handles were some of the best in NBA history, and the reason he goes above White Chocolate is because he was a lethal scorer at certain points in his career. And honestly, he was a more lethal scorer than White Chocolate. From 2003 to 2010, he basically averaged over 17 points a game every year. And even after that, he would still give tough buckets to anyone on defense. I remember him with the Clippers playing a 6-man role where he would come in strictly to give out buckets and make the defense frustrated. He never had to worry about defense or passing because his only job was to score, and if that isn't street ball, I don't know what is. There's an argument for him to be number 1 on this list, and even though I didn't put him there, I wouldn't be mad if anyone did. He was that good at street ball in the NBA. Now that it comes down to number 1 and 2, this is really tough. This is almost a 1A, 1B situation, but since that's lame to do, we're gonna pick which guy goes where. And out of the two, I would have to put Kyrie Irving in the second spot. Like I said, this could go either way, but when it comes to Kyrie, I don't even need to say anything. In my opinion, he has the best handles of all time, and honestly, I think he's a top 3 finisher at the rim ever. There really isn't a weakness in his offensive game because not only is he great at navigating the mid-range, he could shoot the 3 ball at a great clip and run the pick and roll to perfection. Irving was always a street ball guy. From his days at Duke to hitting crazy crossovers in the Rising Stars game and then nailing what might be the biggest shot in basketball history, this guy's resume speaks for itself, and when you watch his highlight tape, it looks like he's back playing with his friends at the park. I think that's a big reason that no matter how old he gets, he'll always be a great option to score because his bag is that deep, which is why I think he went to the finals last year and had a great regular season. If the aliens came down to earth and asked me to show them one player to represent basketball, Kyrie would definitely be one of the guys that comes to mind. But when it comes to the best street ball player ever, one of the guys that led the way for Kyrie is who I gotta pick, and that's Allen Iverson. Now look, I think Kyrie has better handles and overall he might be the better player, but Iverson was the pioneer for all-star small guards because even though there were guys like Muggsy and other all-star point guards, no one did it like him and impacted the game the way he did. He crossed over Michael Jordan when he was a rookie, made every move look simple even though he was shorter than everyone, and at the end of the day, he was a street ball player who happened to make it to the NBA. He was a wizard at finding the perfect mid-range shot, and much like Kyrie, his finishes at the rim were electric. The fact that he's one of the pioneers for small superstar guards and did everything a street ball player would do puts him at number 1, and that means that he's the best NBA street ball player ever. Obviously, there's a bunch of guys that can make this list, and I assume you don't agree with every pick I made here. Let us know what we got right and wrong in the comments below. And as always, click on the screen for more basketball content.